So when players are trying to keep their head perfectly still during the backswing, it makes it extremely difficult for them to move the body correctly so that then they're in a position to be able to move back down through impact in an aggressive fashion. So what we tend to see is players will get into a nice address position, they try to keep their head perfectly still, and they end up doing this sort of thing. So in their efforts to keep their head still, there's no head rotation. So during the backswing, the head should actually rotate very slightly to the right or away from the ball. The idea is that at address, I'm looking at the golf ball, down my nose at the ball, head fairly square. Then when I turn to the backswing, my head should be rotating very, very slightly. So now I'm looking more out of the corner of my eye at the golf ball. I need the head to rotate because it makes it much, much easier for me to then rotate my upper body. In letting that head rotate, I'm now letting it also move very slightly to the right so that when I'm at the top of the backswing here, I'm definitely a little more right than where I was at address. Like I said earlier, the 3D research I've seen suggested that the head movement amongst the better players is anywhere between 1 to 3 inches. How much you move is going to be dependent on your own levels of flexibility and what you're trying to accomplish with your own swing. But the main thing I want to get across to you today is that the head should not be staying still. The other error I see players make when they're trying to keep their head still is they actually get the head to go too much in this direction. So when I set up at address, my body is angled very slightly away from the golf ball. We call this spine tilt. So I'm tilted slightly to the right. I want to maintain that spine tilt throughout my swing. So you can see when I'm here, my body is still tilted slightly to the right. With players that are trying to keep their head still, they lose that tilt, and then when they try to make their downswing, they have to recapture it again, and it's extremely difficult to do that with any consistency. It's also very difficult to generate any power from there. So when you're out practicing next, doing this with a shadow works really well, but essentially what you're looking to do is you want to let your head move very slightly to the right so that at the top of the backswing, your head's more over the inside of your right foot. So you'll see here I go from address, head moves very slightly to the right, and if I drop this club off my nose, you can see I've now got my head over the inside of my trail foot. Body angles are much better. And from that backswing position, I can make a nice aggressive move into the downswing to be able to compress the ball. So when you're out practicing next, don't keep your head still. Allow the head to move slightly to the right if you're right-handed. Also let your head rotate a little bit. It'll make the turn much easier, get your body angles better, and you'll be able to generate much more club head speed and consistency back through impact.
Hello, Jim McLean here, going through some corridors. You hear people talk about keeping the head steady, no movement of the head in the backswing. Just not really true. The head moves in the golf swing. This is Anthony Kim hitting a driver. With your driver, you have the most head movement. With an iron, you have less. On some shots into the wind or short irons, you would have very little head movement. But your chin will generally turn a little bit away from the target, which is part of your head, so that's head movement. Trying to keep your head frozen is a real bad idea. Anthony Kim is one of the greatest players, greatest golf swings in the world right now, and a tremendous driver of the golf ball. One of the things for driving is to hit slightly up on the golf ball on an ascending blow. So if you do a little bit what Anthony does, which is move into that red box from the yellow box to the red box, you wouldn't think he'd move that far over, but in fact he does. Now that's going to be pretty easy to hit up on the golf ball from there. So that's one thing. And plus it's powerful. And Anthony Kim is not a big guy, and he kills it. One of the longer hitters on the PGA Tour. So when he comes back to hit it, he moves back toward the yellow box, not quite though, very common, and it'll move slightly away from the, like right there as he hits it, and then he's hitting that ball slightly on the upswing. See, he leaves the tee in the ground. You see the club's actually going from low right here, in this section right here, to up. That's pretty easy to see. So, does the head move in the golf swing? You tell me.